Okay, today's topic is the shaping the future of e-commerce. And today with us here today, I'm Claudius. I'm from the Singapore Chamber of E-commerce. With me here today, we have three panelists. All right, Mr. Arun. All right, he's from DHL E-commerce. He's the managing director. Next is Saad. Right, he's the managing director, head of commercial in Grab. Right, and the next we have AP Ipong. Right, he's the managing director in Faith Southeast Asia. All right. So let's jump into our panel discussion today with the first question. All right. So in your own words, will you give us our audience an update? All right. I'm getting a bit, all right. All right. An update on one of the biggest impact to your organization during the COVID-19 period. All right. Let's start with Arun. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks everyone. Thank you for having me. So I handle two roles in DHL e-commerce. One of them is a domestic focused role, which allows me to work in operations for Southeast Asian businesses. And the other one is a cross-border business out of Singapore. So let me cover both in brief. So in the domestic business in Southeast Asia, the obvious one is a rapid growth in volume. Everyone knows that. But that has come with in the last 1.5 years with a profound impact in the way we run our basic operations business, right? So, and I'm not going to go into details for that, but that's, let's say, one core element that is observable. Everyone knows about it, but the work that goes beyond it at the bottom is extremely large that it covered. The second one I actually want to talk about in the domestic business is resilience. So I know it sounds like a very corporatized word in terms of how companies manage their resilience during this crisis, but in the first 3 months of the business of COVID when it started, I used to get calls almost every week from some customer who would say, okay, Arun, can you help me with this thing because my provider does not have a basic business continuity plan. They have not planned for their extra sourcing channels, etc. So the basic resilience of their supply chain was unplanned. And this is something that I see a trend was massively impacting us. We had to help our existing customers at that point in time, but not something we could do it for everyone. So resilience is the one I would say which sticks on the domestic side. However, today I'll talk more about cross-border as we go along. And in the cross-border area, I think the first 3 months of COVID were crazy, absolutely, right? So I was on the call talking to airlines, finding space for my shipments every day. As an example, so for example, we spend about, let's say, $3 a kg for a shipment going from Singapore to US, roughly. In the months of May, June, I was spending $24. Yeah, and that peak went up, went down, went up, went down. We were offloaded. So this entire management of capacity, cost, quality, at a time when most of our algos broke down, was one of the biggest challenges that we had to face in cross-border business. So, and I'm giving you an instance of the first 3 months or so, right? But this went on for months. It's still continuing. We've, of course, figured out how to handle this. But the last one I would just want to spend a minute on that would be change in product mix. So just for everyone in the audience, right? So in the cross-border world of e-commerce, we look at the business in 3 products. So a typical pyramid structure. Right at the top is the express product, fast and expensive. Bottom is the postal product, which is slow and cheap. And the middle is the deferred product, which is not too fast and not too slow and not too expensive and not too cheap, right? So this product mix has shifted almost every month up and down, which, as you can imagine, you all know what happens when a product mix changes. You have to optimize your indirect costs, your direct costs. This has been the journey we have been through in the last 3 to 6 months or so. It has stabilized. A lot of our competitors, customers have figured out that the middle of this pyramid called the deferred product is what is growing. So initially it moved to express, it moved back down, and so on and so forth. So these few things, resilience, if I were to quantify it, one on the domestic side, right? The airline haul one is, I think, is a transitory impact, but the product mix change and the move towards deferred product for any SME or MSME that is trying to ship abroad is the 2 key trends that I think would be critical to understand as a biggest impact for us in the last 3 to 6 months. I hope that answers briefly what you're looking for, Claudius.
Yes, quite a lot actually, but thank you for the insight. What about Sat?
Yeah, so from our side, I think the biggest kind of changes that we saw were at its core, Grab, the longest running business has been our transportation business, and the transportation business was heavily impacted, right? And it still continues to this day. There's like lockdowns and various kind of movement restrictions across different markets, and that's continuing to happen, in different markets as new cases emerge. However, on the other side, actually our deliveries business just kind of took off, right? And that's grown, significantly since the sort of lockdowns emerged, and so it's really been something that we've had to work really hard to kind of put the infrastructure in place to support that, and make sure that we're still set up in a way for us to serve the transportation business when things start going back online, right? So managing that kind of dichotomy has been quite interesting and challenging for us. If you think about the delivery side of business, right, there's a couple of aspects to it. The first is on the supply side, which is actually on the the restaurants and the merchants that we have on the platform. There was like a flood of merchants that wanted to go online for the first time, right? In 2020 alone, we onboarded about 600,000 merchants onto our Grab Food and GrabMart platform. And so we had to build a whole bunch of infrastructure to enable that in a seamless way so that we could do it, without any issues for the partners. And then on the fulfillment side, obviously, our transport business is actually served by a 4-wheel fleet, whereas our deliveries business is actually served by a 2-wheel fleet, right? And so, we especially in Singapore, you might have seen it during the lockdowns, actually, we've had to divert a lot of our 4-wheel drivers to actually get them to do, deliveries during those times, so that we could meet the consumer demand, because consumer demand was going through the roof, and being able to manage that fulfillment for the customer, while at the same time kind of managing this kind of dichotomy of the business. So that's been kind of the trend and the theme, I would say, of the last year for us during this COVID period.
I'm sure Grab has seen a bit of change, and we also need to thank Grab for really supporting transport as well. And also, when we talk about Grab Food, that's like sending so many meals into so many households every day, right? Even at this moment, right? Next, can we have AP to tell us your biggest impact of COVID on your business?
Yeah, sure. I think first off is like, I think we all are overworked. Because of that, we were just joking about it before we went online. I think with all the Zoom and the Hangouts, right? I think it's been pretty taxing, I think, on people, right? And I think on the people side, initially it was not easy, right? Because we have to kind of new things to do. We had to actually upgrade some of our systems so that we can actually enable access remotely to some of financial, backends, right? So little things like this, and making sure that we all were comfortable being work offline. How do we collaborate offline? So a lot of tools that we didn't use before, now we have to be conversant in them, right? It's no longer just a Zoom calls, it's just other tools that you can collaborate with, right? So I think that's one on the people side. And I think on the business side, several things. One is that we noticed a huge trend in shift, right? Suddenly, the sales that's coming through our platform were no longer in the CBD area, right? At one point in time, we were kind of proud that while a lot of our customers and the merchants that were on CBD, right? But now it's kind of like very diffused, right? And throughout all the different places, so we have to reorganize our teams to service our merchants in those areas better. And then in certain cases, our supply or our merchants didn't have enough density there, right? So we have to kind of like take steps to mitigate it to get more merchants on those platforms, right? So I think the shift of the merchants, where they're from and where the consumer patterns was huge, and that continues actually till today, right? And then second of all was the mix of merchants that we have, right? And we noticed that there's a lot of trend push towards the heartlands merchants trying to go on board, whether they're the mom and pop shop, the local hardware store, the local, Zita store, etc., right, coming on board. So we were actually pretty lucky in the sense, and also very thankful that we were part of Singapore's Heartlands Go Digital project, right, where we actually onboard merchants on board, right, in the Heartlands, and they get pretty good funding, up to like $2,000, and they all just do to spend 100. So in a short period of time, over the last maybe 5-6 months, we've onboarded like 1,000 merchants in the Heartlands alone. So there was a big trend towards different types of merchants in different areas and different categories. I think lastly, I think I'll share also is where, merchants going multiple channel, right? So for example, we actually have a merchant called Lavette. They are an online fashion retailer. Before COVID, they were on board already. And they were using FavePay in a hackish way So the customers say, what you scan, you pay, and then you show, screenshot us, you WhatsApp us, and then we'll fulfill it, right? Because they did like Faith's loyalty program, the cashback, right? So they kind of hackish way. Then because of that, then we supported this merchant because they told us that, hey, you know what, the orders are just shooting through the roof. They no longer can do this manually, right? They need us to integrate. So, and because of that, we have now introduced like online payments as well for Faith. So that's a new product, right? To kind of like supplement and support merchants who want to go online, right? So that's also has been a very impactful so-called a change for us. And kind of like, I think there was some question regarding omni-channel, actually enabling us to go omni-channel in support of our merchants too. Yeah.
While we talk about trends, I think there are some trends in which we feel could arise from the COVID situation. But what do you think those trends that we actually, I mean, talk about trends, that we actually have sustained influence over a period of time? For example, like we may feel that in, during COVID, certain things are happening, but they could be fleeting. But which are the trends that you feel that could be more sustaining, right? Maybe we start with AP, yes?
Wow. When it comes to trends, quite a fair bit. One, maybe I'll talk about omnichannel since I started with that, right? So I think the omnichannel approach is going to be very key, right? You will have, I think a lot of merchants on our platform anyway, realize that, having offline a business isn't enough. So some of the business that we supported, right, who managed to pivot from, let's say, purely offline, right, to online, and very quickly, whether they do self-pickup, delivery on board, like Grab Foods, platform, delivery platform as well, etc., or they change their product offerings to make it more takeaway friendly or delivery friendly, had a big, huge difference, right, in the business and the sustainability. In fact, some of these merchants who actually adopted omni-channel approaches actually started to thrive quite a fair bit. So I think I see a big trend there, right? So everyone knows, and that one particular channel of attracting customers or enabling them in their, in their e-commerce facilities isn't enough, right? So I think that's one. Two is that we actually also experimented doing different ways to reach out to our customers as well. So we're doing live feeds, right? A lot of people are spending at home now. So we do a little bit of live feed, live shows, if you will, to promote our products and services, all the merchants' products and services, right? We collaborated with some of our merchant brands, went onto their departmental store, and then did live broadcasts, right? Over there as well, introducing different products and services, etc. So I think there's one trend towards that, and I think that's going to continue. So I think video is going to be also something that is pretty interesting. Another big trend that I see right now, at least from payments perspective, is the trend of going into buy now, pay later, right? So I think there's been quite a fair bit of, I guess, coverage over in this area, and the few entrants in there. And I'm also very happy to announce, I've been like busy looking at my WhatsApp and stuff like this, because today we're launching Faith Pay Later, all right, our own product, right? Yeah, it's like so we're actually launching it today. So we're doing in phases, and by sometime tomorrow, I think most consumers of Faith will actually be able to do Faith Pay Later at any store. In Singapore, we have about 12 to 15,000 merchant locations. Anything that you buy, whether is it food or is it a product, whether you go to PHG for shopping, right? You can use Faith Pay Later, right? And it's broken into 3 installments, right? So I think that's a trend that's continued to evolve and to grow. So I think I'm paused there. I think those are a few key trends that, at least from my perspective, that I see. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for letting us know the Faith Pay Later that's launched today. Maybe later I'll go and try.
Yeah, please.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. What about Grab? What about SAT? What are the trends that you feel that has a sustained influence?
Sure, yeah. So at least I think, from our perspective, the one trend that I see, which of course it's something that's been happening and kind of COVID just accelerated it, is actually the digitization piece, right? So as I mentioned, 600,000 merchants that we onboarded in the last year alone, roughly about 2/3 of them probably going online for the first time, right? And this is the first time that they've actually gone online. So I think, that trend is here to stay. And I think, the reality is that brands will start to recognize that, going back to the point that AP was making, that, there needs to be an omni-channel strategy, right? Like brands are starting to realize now that, the customer experience and the customer expectation that's there in the offline experience is going to be different from what they have in the online experience, right? And it's not necessarily the same occasion. And I'll give you kind of an example, right? Or rather an analogy. I mean, for me personally, I enjoy kind of reading a book, right? So, but prior to COVID, I used to travel a lot, and so it was just convenient for me to pick up a Kindle because I wouldn't want to carry like 3 books with me, and because I like to swap between them. Or like when I'm at home, I like listening to vinyl, for instance, right? But you can't carry your vinyl with you when you're traveling, for instance, right? So there's different occasions, and I think the consumer wants different things, and so I think brands are starting to realize that there needs to be a different approach for these kind of different occasions. An example of this is actually, for a lot of our food merchants, over the last year, there's been eating occasions that have been sort of new to them, right? And people, because they're home, because they're with larger groups at home, potentially, we have like the snack time, kind of between 3 to 5 p.m. that we're starting to see people actually order things from restaurants, right? It could be a coffee, it could be a snack, something like that, right? And that wouldn't be an occasion that you would go to like a restaurant or a QSR. You would probably just make yourself a snack at home if you were home. But because people are working, it's a new eating occasion that exists now. Similarly for breakfast, I don't think people used to order breakfast at home, but we're seeing like a huge jump in the number of people ordering breakfast via food delivery. And so we've actually worked with several of our merchants so that they can actually create offerings which are actually catered for those eating occasions. So for example, we worked with some Japanese restaurants in Thailand where now their opening hours are different, and they're actually creating a breakfast menu, which is actually quite new. There are QSRs that are creating like snack offerings. So I think there's these trends which I think we'll continue to see, where brands will realize that whatever their offline strategy is, works for kind of dine in and in store. However, there needs to be a different strategy for online, which is kind of different because they're serving different customer needs. And I think that's a trend which is actually going to stay.
But bear in mind that your profile is regional, so there's quite a bit of things that perhaps you can share with us. Maybe some of the trends are really ahead. For example, they could be from other countries, and we may be reaching the same demographics soon in a way. So there could be something that our merchants can pick up from, right? So those are things in which maybe the chamber itself could get some, of this information from you, and then we can also broadcast to our members.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
Actually,
you.
something else to add also, right? Hearing you speak kind of triggered something else. I see some other trend is about partnerships, right? I think you're going to see a lot of that happening, right? So even in the e-commerce space, like even before going online, we were just talking about it, right? Because like Grab and Faith, we're partners too. Because if you use FaithPay, or you use buy a Faith deal, you can actually use GrabPay as a source of funds. Even though we're FaithPay, kind of think, well, aren't you guys competition? But it's kind of like co-opetition, right? And together we enlarge the pie, right? And when Sat was talking about digitalization, the market is really about just expanding it, right? Collaborating together, and we partner with DBS, Payla, and Singtel Dash as well. And on the merchant side, a lot of them are collaborating as well, right? So you're trying to find efficiencies. For example, we've got 2 of our merchants. One of them is Crave, nasi lemak, right? It's one of my favorite places, right? Yeah, and it's great for takeout, and delivery, right?
One of our top merchants as well.
There you go. Same here, right? Yeah. And together with Thai Dynasty, which is a Thai food, right? So they collaborate together to come up with a Thai nasi lemak kind of dish, right? And then they, combine the strengths, right? We see that, and then you also see a lot of resource sharing between our F&B partners, right? Whether it's a manpower or cost of goods, wherever they have raw materials, etc. Right? So we see, I think, collaboration is going to be more and more a mainstay going forward as companies are forced to kind of look at ways to be more efficient or to share customer databases and grow and thrive together, especially in this really, really trying environment. Yeah.
I really like to come back to that point later, because really collaboration is something that we have not seen as much in this area, even for e-commerce. But there's just one point over here, is that the collaboration comes from people who are actually not so entrenched in the e-commerce, but they're new entrants, right? A lot of them. So they already have such ideas, and when they come into e-commerce, they realize that, hey, I can just work with somebody else down and or upstream, right? So I will come to that in the next question. So let's have Arun also let us know what are the sustained trend. Yeah.
So I think, and we've all talked about growth quite a bit, right? So we've seen that, but the other underlying theme of growth is volatility, right? So I think everyone who's working in this domain anywhere have seen a lot of volatility. And in the essence of volatility, let me give an example, right? So let's assume that you are a home furnishing merchant, right? So you sell, for ease of use, let's say kitchen towels and chairs, right? In a normal month, you would sell 100 kitchen towels and 2 chairs, right? What happened in COVID was suddenly your volume doubled. Now, handling 200 kitchen towels is relatively similar to handling 100 kitchen towels. But handling 4 chairs is much more complex than handling 2 chairs, right? And this is something I saw sustainably across many customers who talk to us, right? And why? So let's start with basic sourcing, right? So they've not diversified their sourcing locations. If they have, let's say they got the 4 extra chairs, they don't know where to keep them, because again, kitchen towels can be racked. But, and again, as you see, I'm an operations guy. This is what comes to me very naturally, right? So, and I've seen people lose sales because of this. So you have 4 chairs, you source them, you get them in, you don't know where to. So I got calls every week from somebody who wanted to do that. Then once that is sorted, for example, they figure out shipping options. And in a general business, let's say you're making a 10% margin. This particular business starts making 6% margin, where your math does not say that it should make 10% margin. Why? And that's where the key trend I want to focus on is data-driven decision making, right? And this has been one of the key trends I have seen across, not just, and I know that sounds like a corporatized term, but we see this across SMEs, MSMEs, all of them who struggled with this for a period, figured out what they were missing out was a real understanding of data that they had. So I know this, one of our biggest customers is out of Singapore, and as I mentioned, I'm going to talk more about cross-border outbound, right? So cross-border outbound for us, there's one customer, a couple, Singaporean couple who sell jewelry. They make jewelry here, they sell outside, right? And that lady who runs the business is absolutely amazing, right? So I meet her once a month or so, and she had the same problem. She was selling only to the US, and the data that she was getting was skewed to one particular destination, which was not very true. But then people like her figured out that data-driven decision making is extremely important to make sure that you understand the volatility in your business and how you handle that. Most people will understand how to handle it once they know the trend, right? And a follow through of that trend that I've seen and I believe will be strongly focused on is how SMEs and MSMEs work with players like Grab and Fave, who have tons of data, who provide them with the support to understand the trend that then goes on to help them make interesting and profitable decisions. We can all talk about growth, but at the end of the day, people need to bring bacon home, right? And that only happens with profit, right? Unfortunately or fortunately, this may be a world of valuations, but people need to get money back home, and that comes with, at this point, data-driven decisions. So that for me is a sustainable trend. People have realized that at every level. Even I did not have a good data lake for my own systems, right? I invested in it. And I know many junior and small SMEs who did the same thing, right? So that's one trend. Again, if there's something I would like my audience to take away today, would be one of those things.
Thank you, Arun. Personally, I get a lot of my data source from logistic firms. So you may have some, or you could be humble about them. All right. So let's talk about new entrants, because we got tons of them. Like Sat said, today I learned something from you. That's like more than 500,000 new merchants going on e-commerce, have gone on e-commerce. They are probably now in the first year. They probably will have learned something in their learning curve, but they're not there yet. But there could be a lot more services that are features within our touch points that could be very relevant to them. That could really help them grow in that way, right? So what would be your advice for new entrants into this market at the age that they are now at, the first year, right? And then, for example, in using e-commerce to reach their customer base, or maybe even to have innovation on their product, or maybe even have a better customer experience in that sense, right? So how would you advise new entrants? May you start from Arun?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I think two things, right? So let me call them out right away. So first is diversification, right? So you have to start with at least a couple of options in your mind on how you would generate revenue. And I would take the example of the same couple I talked about. So their primary source of revenue was the US lane. and US went into lockdown. All right, and it's an SME. It needs to pay its bills, so they had to very quickly diversify to the European lane, for example, right, and sell in Europe. And I even asked them the question, do you sell Singapore? So basic diversification of your sourcing, basic diversification of your business model is something I would recommend to anyone and everyone who is deciding to go into e-commerce right from the scratch. Yes, you need to understand the basics of your business, and there are enough tools and providers and support services that you can employ, including Claudius himself, for example, to help you go online. But after that, you need to have a basic diversification of your revenue source, for which there are players out. So I strongly recommend to all that, whoever, especially Singapore SMEs, given the small size of the market, strongly consider cross-border. There are enough information out there. That would be one. And the second one, again, I throw it out there. We not talked much about this is B2B e-commerce as a segment. And the reason I bring it up as a segment for suggestion is because there is a lot of competition in B2C itself. We have seen the trends flow over from B2C e-commerce to B2B e-commerce, right? And this is a growing market. There's too many inefficiencies in this market which need to be explored. We have just started to scratch the surface. So if again, just summarizing, my recommendations would be diversify your existing business, think about B2B e-commerce. I may be wrong, but worth an effort.
No, but B2B is really the trend that's ongoing right now because of demographics as well. But we go into that demographics later. Let's have Sat also let us know how do you onboard and what would you advise at this moment, because you also learn from that hindsight.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, actually, as I'm, the point that I was making earlier, I think, brands are realizing and recognizing that, the customer that they have online versus offline, and the customer occasion that they might be catering to online versus offline is different, right? And I think, for me, I think, if there's something for the brands to actually sort of adapt or learn or effectively just act upon, is that understanding that those two kind of channels are different, right? There's the offline channel and the online channel, and the way that they need to cater their business to those two aspects is a little bit different, right? It's different. Let me give you an example, right? Ordering groceries at home. In pre-COVID, it might, a lot of people live with their parents. The parents might have been the ones doing the grocery, right? Versus now, maybe the parents are a little bit not that familiar with ordering groceries online, and maybe the kids are doing it, right? And if the kids are doing it, then in that case, they might actually value different things. So for example, they might choose quality over price, for instance, right? And so the brand that is actually going online now, how does that brand cater to this new expectation or this new sort of behavior, right? And so I think it goes back to kind of the point that Arun was making, right, which is around, really understanding from the data what the right thing to do for your business is. At least in our Grab merchant app, there's actually a section in there that the merchant can log into, and they can get insights on their business. What are the trends in terms of where people are ordering from, what time people are ordering, the trends, the data about their the customer behavior for their brand, and then using those insights to actually grow their brand on the platform, like developing marketing strategies. And it's really simple through, we have tools such as Grab Ads, for instance, right, which allows you to actually grow the visibility for your brand. How do you figure out what segment to go after? Which segments are you currently catering to? Which ones are you not catering to? And how do you create the right sort of advertising outreach to open the sort of top of the funnel for your brand? So I would say, the real kind of changes that brands which are going online for the first time can make is to actually use some of the data and insights which are available on the platform to really figure out how to grow their visibility on the platform in the most effective way.
Do you share some of this data with, or provide advisory based on such data with your clients?
Yeah, so actually a lot of the insights are actually available in the merchant portal. So there's a merchant portal that any merchant can log into, and there's an insight section in the portal, and they can go and look at the insights. And we're constantly kind of developing more and more sort of information that the customer would find useful, and they can act upon that information in the portal itself, right? So for example, they can choose to target a certain segment, for instance. So things like that, I think, would be super helpful for the brand to make the right decisions for their business.
Great. I mean, if I'm a small business, I can take some data from logistics as to alternative products, how to optimize my logistics. I can take information from the market, right, as to who's buying, when they're buying, how they're buying. I can even get it from Faith as well, as in how much they would be paying for or how much they would not be paying for. So what about AP? What do you think?
Yeah. So maybe I'll like urge all the viewers out there, if you're thinking about coming to the, this space, e-commerce omnichannel, is that maybe take a pause, right? Because you think about this, COVID, uh, it's a probably an immense opportunity, right? Now, because I think when you're running a business, if there is no external forces, right, you just kind of continue what you're doing, right? And then it's always kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do that later. I'll go into e-commerce later. I'll do digitalization later. It's fine. Our business is fine, right? Just do offline, right? Whatever, right? So actually think about this, because of COVID, we're all in this situation that you think about it, it's the greatest opportunity where some parts of our business maybe grind to a halt. Then what are you going to do, right? Why don't you take that time to then do something that you wouldn't do otherwise, right? It's like, because I was hearing like Tony Fernandez or AirAsia, it's like, hey, for him, it's like there's only one time in everyone's lifetime that every plane is grounded, right? What can you do? So you want to add the other projects, it's time to do it now, right? So I think we need to do that. I think a lot of you guys out there, if you're thinking about doing something, now's the opportunity, right? Whatever it is, right? To get into digitalization, right? E-commerce, what have you, right? And so that's one. And then two is like, don't be afraid, right? Just try. And these days there are, one, it's not expensive to go online, right? It's actually free, right? In most cases, in certain cases, there are grants that they pay you, right, to do it. And in certain markets like Malaysia, the government is putting money in people's wallet so that they can do digital shopping, right? So they have got like 2 installments of that already. One just went past like a few months ago, right? So they put money in consumers' money, wallet, right? And then they go and spend. It's free money, right? So, and if you are not digitalized, you do not have an e-commerce platform, you don't have a GrabFood, or you're not on, any of the Faith platform, then you won't take advantage of customers like that, right? So I think there's a real need, and I've seen cases, I'm sure you guys have as well, right? You sit down there and a customer may ask, hey, do you accept GrabPay? Do you accept FavePay? And the person, no, and then he just walks away. It's happened to me, right? Because sometimes we don't carry our wallet, or I realize, we don't go to ATM as much. I only have $10, right? Oh, my dinner is like $20 or shit, right? So you need to, otherwise you lose customers, right? So yeah, so I think for new entrants is really to come in, all right, and just get started, right? And even for bigger merchants as well, if you're running a big organization, do it, right? And then second point is want to dovetail into like what Sat was mentioning about data, right? For example, if I ask you, right, which of your customers spend more, right? What age group? What is it? Gender? Would you know? I think a lot of you wouldn't know, but if you have FavePay on board, we will also have a merchant, app, right? Where to find out, right? At what time, which gender spend more, at what age, right? Those, then you can use it to personalize your product or service, right? You may realize that your customers is not what you think it is, right? It may be a certain demographic groups. Or with that data, it starts to say, hey, wait a minute, actually, I do have a segment of young people, or maybe conversely, a segment of older people, right? So your concept is, may start to change about your archetype customer. So yeah, so there's a lot of data to be used, right? And actually, if you talk to me, I can actually also help you advise. Hey, I look at the macro data because we facilitate over 1 million transactions on FavePay in Singapore alone, right? A month, right? So we know what are the hotspots, right? And we know what category of food sells well, right? Of course, it's just macro data, right? So there's a lot of stuff we can do, and that will also drive down to personalization, right? Whether you personalize through our app or personalize using the data we have for your traditional business, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of gold mine that you can tap into, right? Yeah. So get started already if you haven't, Yeah.
Great. AP seems to be the very positive one. In fact, he's one of the member of co-founding team. So yes, immense experience on this. So we talk about there are some trends, there are new entrants, and some trends are here to stay. And the new entrants, well, how do we deal with them? Have we, like AP said, adjusted some of our services so that we can actually bring more of these people on board? I mean, or help them grow, in their sense, so that we can actually have a basically when they grow, we grow, right? So, and there's a lot more new entrants, right? So have you adjusted your services or adjusted some of your touch points or experience so that you can actually support them in a way? Like, for example, there's a lot of things that we have just mentioned. So are they okay to come to you or to one of your team, right? And say, hey, basically I'm from Heartlands, or I'm from, I have some shops, right, in the CBD area. How can I improve the sales and things like that? So have you adjusted or have to this so that we can actually help them grow?
Um, yes, for the many, as I try to answer the question, there are many different touch points, right? One, in terms of onboarding merchants, also there has been some changes to support onboarding merchants. So whenever you sign up for a product or service, especially for FaithPay, right, and if you're an offline merchant, we have to support you, right? So we have catered our process to support the merchant differently, right? So now we can do it very effectively remotely, and then we have video clips that you can, a merchant can onboard their staff, right, so that they can train, so everyone is up to speed. And how do you accept a payment? How do you reconcile payments, etc. Right? So on operational support, we do that. We've done changes. Then on the consumer-facing side, like I was mentioning earlier, now we accept FaithPay online, right? So we just launched that like about 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and we've already onboarded together with our e-commerce partners, Shopkada, EasyBuy, WooCommerce, maybe close to about 100 over merchants in 2 markets, Singapore and Malaysia, right? So we're enabling our merchants to go omni-channel, right? At the same time, we're also talking to big players, departmental stores, right, electronic stores, to accept FaithPay online as well. So that's also one that we're catering our product solution to that, right? And that requires quite a fair bit of backend work, right? Tech development, app development to support. So that's one, and we do that because we want to help them get more business, right? Yeah, and help them come on board and to tap more opportunities. So yeah, so we have, so I think those are a couple of things that I can think of, right? Sure. That we have adjusted. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, AP. What about Sat? Yeah, I'm asking the same question one more time.
Sure.
Yeah, but actually there could be things in which you could be saying that, hey, for our new entrants, we could actually be adjusting our service. But I feel that Grab is adjusting almost every week, that kind of thing. Very agile.
Well,
yeah.
The reality is that, we continue to sort of iterate on the product that we have for the merchants, and whether it's on the Grab Food platform or Grab Mart platform, there's several examples of how we've had to adjust. And the reality is we don't have all the answers, right? Like we're trying new things as well. And so, for example, we don't have any experience, or we didn't have any experience working with large supermarket chains. That wasn't something that we had done previously, as we had built the food platform. The food platform was very much catered towards restaurants serving customers, like, and the shopping experience within the app was just not optimized for grocery shopping, really. But I think those are that's feedback that we have from consumers, and also from the merchants that we have on our platform. So now we're actually kind of focusing on how we can actually optimize the shopping experience for Grab Mart, which is kind of a new vertical, right, compared to food delivery. Another example would be if you look at Southeast Asia, for there's generally pretty low credit card penetration, pretty much outside Singapore, right? And if you look at other markets, especially if you look at younger people, right, the demographic that Grab is really popular with, there's very low credit card penetration. And as things have moved online, that's kind of been kind of a hurdle for a lot of people as well to actually shopping online or ordering food online, etc. And so not to steal any thunder away from Faith, but we actually have a pay later product that we've launched pretty recently, and similar to similar kind of thesis. And I think this is really kind of growing the overall ecosystem again, right? Is getting more and more sort of consumers comfortable with kind of the buy now pay later kind of a product, right? And especially as it comes to kind of frequent purchases, high value purchases, etc. And so, that's been one of the changes that we made, which literally comes from consumer feedback as they're using GrabPay, and they're using GrabPay online as well as offline. We have we have the Grab Pay Later product, which we've launched, and it's available in kind of two formats. One is, an installments format. So if you make a high value purchase, you can pay it off over 3, 6, 9 installments or whatever, or it's you buy it now and you pay off within a month, right? And that's another kind of a change we've made, I would say, in the last the last few months, which is something that we weren't doing before. Yeah, so I would say, those two things. I think those two things are good examples, but of course, like you mentioned, I think there's, we're constantly kind of iterating the platform and the product to continue to make it, better for our consumers as well as our merchant partners.
Thank you, sir. I see a lot of potential in the GrabMart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. So we should get to hear a lot more on that
Sure.
in the future, right? So yes, what about Arun? How do you adjust your service?
So while AP and Saad talked about the interesting and sexy stuff of the business, let me talk about the boring stuff, right? In the cross-border world, I mentioned this in the initial stages, right? That the deferred product, which is the middle of the layer, is something that has expanded dramatically. So people have had to move to Express for the COVID times, and then they move back. The expectation of fast delivery outside of Singapore has increased dramatically, which means we had to invest a lot in our deferred product. So we created products which allow us to, let's say, half the time, not at twice the cost, to US, to Europe. So largest lane, as you can all imagine, is US. Then you have Europe, then you have Australia. So select 10 to 29 lanes, if not wrong, 29 lanes. We set up a product which was a deferred product, which allows merchants to send to these countries at something that's cheaper than Express, but also faster than the postal operators. And this product is extremely fast growing product, which is catering to the consumer's need who are expecting faster delivery, but at the same time, not burning the wallet, right? So this is the one base of it. However, it was not just the pandemic that changed the business for us, but it was also regulatory changes. And this is where it gets really boring, right? So during regulation, the American counterparts changed regulations on how stuff comes in. Europe introduced VAT, right? Europe introduced something called data submission guidelines. And all of this is extremely complex in a world where you already have to deal with customs regulations for 220 countries, right? So you can go to a DHL or anyone else, but at that point in time, you're also expending on quality advice. However, these deferred products, along with the ability to manage the regulation, is what allows SMEs and MSMEs in Southeast Asia and Singapore specifically to go out. So this is the second area which is catering to regulations of stepping into new markets that we have invested in. So these are two major areas, and we have enough customers in the last 6 months or so who have, and the case study is the most obvious one, right? So when the peak hit US after New York peak, their shipments slowed down. They had to immediately pivot to Europe, for example. At that point in time, Europe was slightly better, right? So then when they had to pivot to Europe, they had to find something that would get them a quick VAT registration, quick data submissions technologies, how to handle customs in 29 countries. Even some cases, how do I do language translation into Hungarian? Of course, we could not help in that, right? But this is the kind of challenge that these SMEs who were trying to do abroad, sell abroad, had to manage. And sort of the two ones that I mentioned, deferred product, which allows them to go faster, and the second one being the ability to manage the regulations in a structured manner. We've invested significantly. We continue to invest because we see that this is going to be the massive opportunity outside of Singapore.
That's not the boring part. Yeah.
Well, if you say so.
I think
I'm glad.
Yeah, I think the merchants of various sizes, I think, should come and listen to this because not everybody knows where they stand. Yeah.
I think it's been difficult, right? So, and again, maybe anecdotal, right? So why did this change? And I'm not a big fan of politics to be brought up in discussions, but this was one of the changes brought about by the adamant push by Donald Trump. Right? He changed this regulation, and for good or bad, I think it's for people to judge. But that resulted in the change of an institution called UPU, which has been running for 160 odd years. And because of one particular instance of being obstinate about something, it changed the entire industry. And it is still going through that. You know? And let me also add that we are nowhere as closely agile as these two guys are. So we do institutional change, and it takes us time, right? And there's nothing to be wrong about it. That's how we are. But when that happens, we have to do it in response to changes like these. And these are the ones that require that kind of involvement by people, and building that product which allows people to make it stable over a period of time. Is it stable today? Of course not, right? Will it be stable in 6 to 12 months? I think so.
I also don't think so. Anyway, I think the situation is going to be still volatile until at least September, October period. Yeah, where maybe some of the vaccination news come out and kind of like stabilize the market regionally. So, we're also waiting for Malaysia to recover. Yeah, great. So, is there maybe I'll take some questions from the audience, right? So, a couple of interesting ones. How will urban logistics transform? It's good because Arun, your logistics, right? Half logistic, half payment, faith payment. Right. So, like to also take this question, which is important. How will urban logistics transform? What's your view? For example, to consolidate multiple deliveries for a single mail, or a single mall, or home address. Yeah. What do you feel?
Yeah. Well, I think this is like crystal ball gazing with some information, right? And each one has its own opinion. So my view is, and I think this is where Grabs have done an amazing job, right? In the last 2 to 3 years, and there's a lot of investment required to learn. But I believe the future of urban logistics like Singapore is what I call hyperlocal, right? And hyperlocal is what allows you to consolidate volumes in an efficient manner. Which is exactly what Grab has done with various different models. GrabMart, I'm sure, is exactly doing that in the next step. But are we there to achieve the exact optimal scale to make that profitable? Not there yet, right? But that's the journey we are all in. So the hyperlocal business model where you're not Singapore anymore. You're Singapore divided into 23 zones, for example, and each 23 zone, for example, has its own ecosystem of players. And I think we were talking about this earlier when someone's wife is now becoming a collector of bulk buying, right? Yep. So that's a small coexisting platform inside those 23 components of Singapore, where you build a hyperlocal model with all services combined. That's where the super app makes sense, but again, to be tested. So I believe hyperlocal is the way forward for logistics in urban areas. There's a lot to be done there, including the benefits on CO2 reduction, which is an extremely important goal for us and our future generations. So it's a complex topic, but if I were to use one word to explain that, it would be hyperlocal.
Actually, can I sneak in a question? Yeah, and actually, aren't you all also competition a little bit as well? And how does DHL go into the hyperlocal delivery space, right? Versus, I say, the GoGo vans or Grab delivery and stuff, right?
No, we're not competition actually. So actually, not at all, in fact. So the only overlap would be a little bit of e-commerce deliveries in a specific location, right? Because Grab Express primarily does point to point, right? We do consolidated deliveries. So we are a good complement to each other because we have a slightly more heavy, let's for lack of a better word, and a slightly more asset heavy network, which is more tuned to a certain network. Would we go into hyperlocal? At this rate, no. Right? I'll let them solve it for another 5 years before we enter back again.
Yeah, sigh of relief, from Saad's face, right? All right, 5 years, guys, like, yeah.
Let them burn the money, we go back later.
I mean, on our side, I mean, the way Grab Express operates is, for us, it's really about like point A to point B, which means, it could be a buyer and seller. For instance, a lot of our volume actually for Grab Express actually comes from social sellers, right? So social seller kind of traffic, and then increasingly we're doing some e-commerce where there's like instant delivery in e-commerce. So like in Indonesia, for instance, you can order from an e-commerce site and get delivery like right away, right? You can choose to get your order delivered from the seller instantly. So we're doing some of that. But yeah, what DHL does, which is, to consolidate deliveries and do like international shipping, etc. I mean, that's not something that we do at all, and probably not an area that we want to get into either.
So you guys are complementary.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So not competitors, right? And you as well. Complementary services.
Yeah, I think we're
very
just
much.
like yeah, we're not into delivery in any way. So, but we just facilitates like the self pickups, right?
So we disappoint you. No fights here today.
Yeah, no fights here. Yeah, we're on
Yeah.
friendly terms, you know.
Which is good. All right, that's a good choice of panelists. All right, so what about let's look into the future because it's kind of like 4:50 now. Let's look in future. Is there anything within the next 6 months that we should look out for from your organization that would number one clearly illustrate your value proposition. Number two is actually a realization of the things that we have just mentioned as well. For example, how much do you think that faith pay later would help the industry, or how much it would then help the merchants as well, or what kind of new services that we can expect from Grab, So yeah, I feel that that's something that we can look forward to. And basically, let's start from Arun. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's a slight repetition. So for me, I think two things, right? So primarily, we are back to basics, which is essentially our logistics is our core. So we're not doing anything around it. And within the logistics, I already talked about this, the deferred product. But if I were to call this a theme for us over the next few years, it would be connecting Southeast Asia to the world. Right, so we're investing a lot in building these products, not just from Singapore out to the world, but also from all the geographies within Southeast Asia. So and this involves various elements to the mix, right? And I said again, the difficult part in this is the boring part, which is the customs, the making sure that a seller sitting not only in Jakarta but also in Bandung or Surabaya is able to access our network from Singapore. Right, so that's the origin-based fulfillment, not fulfillment, I won't call it fulfillment, origin-based access to the network that we built out of Singapore for the top 30 destinations in the world, firstly. And then, of course, we also have our 200 destination network for the slower product. So just the deferred product and the slower product, we have built it in the last 6 months, focused on Singapore going outbound. We're going to focus on it as a Southeast Asia connecting to the world. And you will see a lot more of it as we spend more on marketing and stuff. But again, as I said, we spend more on marketing after we've been thorough with our product, which we're not there yet. So I think that would be it. Southeast Asia to the world using our deferred product, crossing the hurdles of customs and all that to make a smooth ride for our merchants where they're able to send stuff not to US, not in 3 days, but in 5 to 7 days or 7 to 9 days, which gives them a cheaper product, allowing them to access at least the top 30 markets in the world, which opens up a completely different gamut of challenges for them, but at the same time, and this includes within Southeast Asia. So for example, if we connect Indonesia to Singapore to US, it obviously means we're connecting Indonesia to Singapore and vice versa. So it's intra Southeast Asia and Southeast Asia to the world for the top 30 lanes. And that's going to be from the deferred product perspective.
Very good news. I always feel that Singapore, although the market is small, we are very blessed with a lot of world-class, top-notch services that enables our products and services to reach the world. So I think this illustrated it.
Yeah, I just want to, sorry, I think this sounds, again, as I said, this is basic, right? A lot of people expect this to be available already. It is true, it is available, but is it available for the e-commerce industry? That's where the problem is. It is available for the B2B. And HSBC wants to send stuff to US, sure, you can send it in 3 days or 1 day, right? But can you send a t-shirt which costs $4 with a shipping fee of $17? Obviously you will not, right? But to build a product that can smoothly go through with 27 track events and no customs challenges, basic visibility, which allows you to understand it's going to reach there on time. I have a basic data set. Again, I'm not going to say I'm as good as them on data. Basic data set that helps me allow to understand and manage my customer queries. And that does not exist out of Southeast Asia right now.
If I want to get data sets, why choose one when I can have both, right? So don't have to choose
expensive.
Okay, what about that? Next 6 months.
So I'll have to caveat this by saying first that Grab is on its way to becoming a public company. So unfortunately, we're in a quiet period, so I can't be making any forward-looking statements as such. But that said, I think what I can share is that I think there's a relentless focus on making sure that we continue to outserve our consumers, our merchant partners, and our delivery partners, right? And so there's I think what you can expect from happening over the next 6 to 12 months is the merchant product that we have today. I think it's it was built out with the food merchant in mind. I think that needs to adapt to a whole nother set of merchants. And I think that process has already begun. And I think that will continue to happen. We'll continue to kind of adapt the consumer product, the app, the Grab app that you and I use to order your meal, etc. And that will continue to adapt more towards kind of the Grab Mart product and the grocery delivery product, because there's definitely a renewed focus there. And then we continue to iterate on the delivery product for the drivers as well, for the delivery partners. So yeah, so that's about all I can share this time. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Yes, there's not a lot, but maybe we can give you some suggestion. Like,
Sure.
maybe you can start a live streaming of the zi cha while they're cooking. But that's my food. All right, no, just kidding. Yeah, what about AP? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think exciting times for Faith over the next 6 months. We're not going public, so we don't have that gag order yet. So I think for Faith, for all businesses, there's two things that they're concerned about, right? One is you want to get more revenue, more customers. And then one, you want to lower your cost, right? And I think Faith is in a very unique position where we're B2B2C, that we can help both aspects of it, right? So some merchants get on board Faith because we help them lower the cost, right? Whether it's the cost of accepting payments, frictionless, whether it's the cost of acquiring a new customer, right? At the same time, we're also in the business of helping our merchants, if you're on board, get more customers, right? Get more loyal customers through our cashback program. So we have a relentless focus to look at these two aspects, right? It's not easy, right? It's quite crazy because we've got both sides to think about, right? And at the platform, merchants want, sell things more expensive, customers want it cheaper. How do you balance that, right? But we're just relentless focus. I think we're doing quite an okay job at that. So relentless focus on one, I think for merchants is really reducing costs, making them more efficient, getting more customers. And then for customers, it's getting more savings, right? Getting more mileage. Want Faith to be a daily app, not just a weekly app. So that's what I want to do. So very interesting position to achieve all of that. In the next 2 months, Faith is we're going to launch about 12 new products, right? When I say 12 new products, right? It's not just on one consumer side because we've got merchant platforms that we do upgrade, right? Different nuances and stuff like that. So what I can say is that one, we've already launched FaithPay online. You can go to Lavette, Tinsel Rack online, and actually use FaithPay. Two, we just live FaithPay later today, right? If it's a bit wonky, let us know, right? I think it's fine, so, bear with us for a while, So I think FaithPay later seems to be, going to be a big thing. And that is useful for both merchants and customers, right? For merchants, the promise of FaithPay later is that you get customers to increase their average order, right? Average AOV, right? Average order value, right? For customers, why not? Right? It's interest free. You get deferred payment. Why don't you do it? Right? So I think that's going to be exciting as well. The other thing that we'll be coming out with would be going more and more omni-channel. We're thinking of some credit card related products. That's all I can say, right? Tune in, right? And more ways for you to earn your rewards points, right? And another aspect is that over the next 6 months, we'll be launching with new payment partners as well. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can, what's called a mini app, right? You can find Faith's mini app in like Singtel Dash and DBS PayLah, right? You can click it and you can scan a FaithPay QR code and get the cashback. We've got two more big partners coming on board. One of them is a big bank. Another one is some big payment player, right? You can expect that. So as a consumer, you have more avenues that you can, use, right? Whatever your native app you're comfortable with, and more ways that you can earn rewards point. Yeah, so I think those are exciting things that's going to come about the next 6 months, and super excited, right? And likewise, like what Sat was mentioning, we're always iterating. So look forward to working with more merchants like you, right, out there, and to shape a better product together with us. Yeah.
I'll really look out for it. Yeah, it's quite.
Yeah, thank you, Claudius.
It's quite a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. Yeah, take us, the Chamber of E-commerce, as one of your avenue for such information to flow out.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
thank you.
Cool. Yeah, we'll reach out to you. Thanks.
We do have a question for you from one of the viewer. Does Faith use user spending data to do customization on what the user sees?
Very good question. At this point in time, we don't, right? We do use aggregated non-identifier and identifier information to kind of improve our product positioning, improve where we target merchants that we will supply, to consumers, right? But the other thing which we're doing right now is personalization, right? We're in the midst of doing it. It's like a 2-3-step process that we're going to personalize. So internally, it's a joke, right? I'll share with you guys, right? I was telling my guys, as long as you don't show me, when I go onto a Faith app, I don't find maybe like a nail painting deal, we're there, right? Not quite there yet. Sometimes I still see it, right? Yeah. So I think personalization is the next big thing that we're working on. So to the audience who asked that question, yeah. And I think the reason why I want to do that is so that we can give you a better, less clicks to what you want to have, right? Clicks to purchase, right? So that it's more efficient when you're on our app, and you better discovery, right? And then for merchant as well, then it'll be better conversion ratio and conversion rates, right? And give you things that you really, really want and like, right? So I think that's what we'll be doing in terms of like using certain data for personalization and recommend products and services that more likely that you will like. If you like eating Japanese food, we probably have that data, and then we can kind of like show you stuff that you appreciate, right? Yeah. So it's all about relevancy and timeliness. Yeah.
Great. So feel free to always speak to Faith so that they can understand what you want and basically customize the features for you. We're almost at the end of the panel discussion, but I would like to have just one more question so that everybody works overtime today, right? One more question, right? Based on your hindsight, from the last 6 months to a year, what will be your advice for those merchants or those players who are not yet at e-commerce, right? Maybe just a sentence for them, something like that, right? Yeah. So let's start from AP.
Who are not yet on e-commerce, is
Yes,
it?
not yet your customer. Put it this way.
Okay. If not now, when? Right? If not now, when, right? I think this is the biggest opportunity. Digitalization is huge. Solutions out there. And I can guarantee you, as long as you adopt any digitalization platform from any of the players, including Faith, Grab, DHR, or anyone out there, you will see easily a 20-30% uplift in your business. Easily, right? I kid you not. And if you don't, you're going to lose out, right? And I mean it, because if you take a look at the COVID, right? And I looked at the data recently. In the last year, our business in Faith in Singapore has doubled from pre-COVID to now, doubled. Now, if your business is flat, then you're behind, right? If your business is like 20-30% increase, you're behind, because my business on aggregated basis, right, for all different merchants on all different platforms, you're like 10-20,000 merchants, right? And in this market, like 30 over 1,000 Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia have pretty much doubled, right? So that's the point, right? If not now, when? Thank you.
Great from AP. What about San?
Yeah, from our side, I guess, similar sentiment, right? And I'm sure, the businesses that haven't gone online, I'm sure there are very good reasons for it, right? It could be perhaps the technology is intimidating, right? Or perhaps they just haven't figured out yet how, this new channel works in their existing cost structure. And these are very good reasons, right? But I guess, the message I want to leave, the ones who haven't gone online yet, is that, look, we're here to kind of figure out a way, for instance, at Grab, we also have like modularized our service, right? So for instance, there's a merchant has their own fleet or their own couriers that they deliver food with. They can go online with a kind of lead generation model where they only get the order and the order is fulfilled through their own fleet. The opposite can happen as well. We have Grab Express. So for instance, you don't want customers to order from Grab. I just want to run a website and I want people to order directly from the website. You can use Grab Express to do that last mile fulfillment. So, the modularization is there. The pricing can work. I just encourage everyone to just learn a little bit more. And if there's stuff that I can help with, please feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you, Sir. Arun?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, my answer would be obvious, not just Singapore go out, but I think I would like to end by using the first point that AP mentioned, right? So I think in every business, having the right people and empowering them is key. So when you decide to go online, hire the right people. It's not easy, but when you do that, empowering them to make decisions is key. And I think that's the underlying theme. And I just want to end with this because AP started with that, and it's a absolute basic of any business. So I know I want you all to be online. I want you all to be online and sell outside of Singapore. That helps me. But when you do that, please do focus on hiring the right people and then empowering them to make the right decisions. Because for me, the best way out of COVID was not technology, not anything else, but was having the right rock stars in the right place, making the right decisions. Yeah, so that's key.
Wow, that's very deep. Okay, a lot of takeaways. Right. Hopefully, the audience, you have a lot of takeaways today. Always, of course, feel free to come to any of those panelists to have a deeper conversation with them, and feel free to check out their services for you in e-commerce. I'm Claudius from Singapore Chamber of E-commerce. This is Bridge Plus. It's a very nice place. Come here next time. All right. Just thank you, everybody. See you next time.